Welcome to part 3A in particular of combating medical tyranny. And today we're looking at the vaccination rollout and what the implications are at law. So this is the People's Lawyer here, giving you the information that you need to make informed decisions and to protect yourself from the medical tyranny that I mentioned. So my assumption today, I have 4 assumptions actually. The first assumption is that you're over 18 and therefore you have capacity to make your own decisions. Secondly, that you've done your own research. Thirdly, that you have drawn all the right conclusions, all the sensible conclusions. And fourthly, that you are not prepared to be part of a human experiment, because without certified trial results on animals, this is one giant human experiment. So let's first of all look at the common law, what the common law says about a threat of a vaccine. Okay, so we're looking at crimes against the man or woman or boy or girl based on a threat of a vaccination. Well, that would be common assault. Now, at common law, you only have damages for breach of the law. So it's not the most practical remedy, but I'm just giving you an idea of what crimes potentially are being committed by the white coats wielding syringes. If you're actually vaccinated and you haven't given your consent, so it's against your will or without evidence of consent, then at common law, that is battery, much more serious crime than common assault. Common assault is more about trespass to person's feelings. The idea is you put someone in fear of some consequence. But with battery, it's actual physical contact, harm caused by ill-intentioned physical contact. We're also looking at potential manslaughter if death occurs due to lack of fully researched medical preparation and medical practice and procedure. Then we are looking at a form of homicide, which the Americans would call it, but here it would be manslaughter. So let's now move on to the crimes against the person, and we do distinguish between men, women, and persons. But for the moment, let's paper over that distinction for now. The statutory law says that you have an offence of actual bodily harm. Section 47, Offences Against the Person Act 1861, says that if there is injury to a person deliberately caused, that is a criminal offence. There's also grievous bodily harm in sections 18 and 20 of the same act, Offences Against the Persons Act 1861. The essential difference is that grievous bodily harm tends to be permanent injury. But they both can be serious, but the grievous one will be permanent. And vaccine injuries can certainly be permanent. Now, as I suggested before, because this is a giant trial, a human experiment, so the Nuremberg Code comes into play. The Nuremberg Code, which is not enforceable directly in a court of law, gives you the right to refuse medical intervention without disadvantage. That's 6.1 of the Nuremberg Code. The voluntary informed consent of the subject is a prerequisite to lawfulness. That's 6.3. So you must have, you must be able to give your voluntary and fully informed consent according to the Nuremberg principle, the Nuremberg Code. The United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, otherwise known as UNESCO, have the UDBHR, the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, which has Article 6, informed consent, which corroborates or consolidates the Nuremberg Code. And again, although it's not technically enforceable in a law court, it lays down the principle of information and consent for any medical intervention. Information, so full database of information is a definite prerequisite for consent. So it's not just consent, it's fully informed consent. And that is a fundamental human right. To give your permission or consent, you must have the rational capacity to do that. So you must be of sound mind or of the correct age, which would normally be 16 if you're at school. Another aspect of the Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights is that in no case should a collective community agreement substitute for an individual's informed consent. So as we're talking about medical research or a huge medical experiment, explicit informed consent is a minimum prerequisite. So consent cannot be implied. It must be evidenced. There is no question that what we know as CV19 is as I said before, one giant medical experiment, and we need to tread very carefully as we proceed. In the next episode, episode 3B, we will look at how treading carefully relates to exercising our rights, not to comply, not to take a vaccine, because we are being responsible, we're being self-loving, we're being non-compliant in a self-loving, sovereign way, and we're putting as a priority our health and well-being. I hope that's been of value to you, and we'll see you in the next episode.